It's spooky season, so I went to Salem, Massachusetts. Here's the seaport. And I went to the visitor center and I asked about the town's Black history. Now, the guy behind the desk looked me dead in the eye and he said, "Oh, that's in Boston." No, friend. Black people existed everywhere and I want to know what they did in Salem. Why? Hi, I'm Angela. I'm a professor. I wrote a book on the slave trade, and my job has taught me that Black people's history is generally the first to be erased everywhere. So now it's the first thing I look for when I travel. So fortunately, the National Park Service got me, kind of. They collected some research of the Black presence in Salem, and I spent the day tracking down the places where some of the most interesting things in Salem happened. And I know what you're thinking, right? Salem is the place where Christian fundamentalists falsely accused, mostly women, of witchcraft and publicly tortured and executed them. And yeah, that is interesting and a horrible sort of I live in the South and see this coming in the future if things go to hell in November kind of way. But beyond the witch trials, Salem is home to some of really subversive Black people in history who changed the course of all of our lives. So this month, I'm going to tell you all about them. And today we are doing slavery and the slave trade in Salem, Massachusetts. So something a lot of people don't think about is that Salem was a port town with an economy that was almost wholly dependent on the Atlantic slave trade, right? And it's because in its early years, in the 1600s and 1700s, the easiest way to make money in Salem was fishing. That whole area was known for and is still known for cod. Exhibit A, here's some cod I had in Salem. Delicious. Well, back then, cod was so plentiful that it was considered a poor person food, and a lot of the fishermen would catch nets full, dry them, and sell them directly into the slave trade. In fact, most British slavers carried barrels or big giant boxes full of dried cod that they would use to feed the enslaved captives below deck. But that's not all. In 1638, some of the earliest enslaved Africans were brought into the Massachusetts Bay Colony on board the Desire, a Salem-owned ship. Enslaved people like Tituba, who I talked about in an earlier video, worked as servants and craftspeople in the homes and businesses of wealthy Salem residents, such as the fundamentalist Christians responsible for the witch hysteria during the witch trials, where they were in danger of being accused due to their visible cultural, linguistic, and racial difference. So Massachusetts abolished slavery comparatively early, in 1783, but plenty of Salem's residents continued to work in the slave trade as merchants, captains, and ship owners. In the Slave Voyages database, we find a total of 18 voyages that departed from Port Salem in the 1700s. They went to various places, mostly in the Spanish Americas, which makes sense because the Spanish didn't do a lot of their own slave trading. They outsourced it. So you have places like Dominica and Cuba on that list. The most interesting of these I found was Captain William Fairfield of the slave schooner Felicity. He was killed by African captives somewhere on the Atlantic Ocean during an insurrection while sailing from Sierra Leone to Suriname. So sad. Anyway, his ship took on 35 captives from Sierra Leone in West Africa, and we know that 29 made it to the destination alive. Sadly, no other documents are known currently about this, but things are always changing, so in the future we may find out more. One thing we do know, though, is that a lot of people in Salem didn't approve of this. When he died, there was a bit of attitude that I really appreciated. Now, why does this matter? Well, it further proves that there were no real geographic limits when it came to the support of slavery in the United States. White Americans in every part of the nation engaged in, profited from, or otherwise supported the slave trade and slavery, right? It was the backbone of the American economy, not just the Southern economy. Likewise, white people in every part of the nation were also horrified at this concept, right? This tells us that just like today, the political situation in America is not North versus South, right? And it never was. It's selfish bigots versus Americans who want to move forward into an equitable future, right? Anyway, next time we'll get into the Black abolitionists of Salem, so like and follow to make sure you don't miss out on that story.